Hi everybody, it's Boo Ray Perry from Tampa, Florida, and today we are going to talk about what I would like to see them do with the next iteration of the Fuji X100f. Now we are hearing that this camera is going to be called the X100V. This is called the F because F stands for 4, and so the next one would be 5. They can't call it the F again, so maybe they call it the V, the Roman numeral for 5, which is very clever. So that's what we're hearing so far. Before we get started, I want to remind you, be sure and check out my podcast, which is called Photobomb, and you can find it anywhere that podcasts are found. Also, be sure and check out my group on Facebook, Pro Photo Talk with Boo Ray Perry. And finally, all the stuff that you see attached to my camera, all the stuff that I carry in my travel kit, and I did a whole other video on my travel kit on my channel, all the stuff that I carry in my Pro case, basically every piece of gear I own is on my website. So there's a link in the description below, and if you go there, you'll be able to see every single thing that I carry, and there's links to everything, and if you buy it from my website, I get like $1. So that's nice, and helps me pay for new things like this cool lens hood that I just bought for my camera to replace the one that I had before, which I broke. All right, so let's get started and find out what the top 5 things are. And I'm going to count down from 5 to 1, 1 being the most important. All right, here we go. Number 5 on my list has got to be the touch screen. And it almost didn't make my list. It's just that I kind of need a top 5 list because it sounds better than a top 4 list. So at number 5 is a touchscreen on the back. I'm really good at moving around using the buttons on the camera. And I know that there are some people who really would like to see a touchscreen on this camera. But from the reviews that I have read about the touchscreen and its operation on other cameras that Fuji makes, it's kind of wonky. Sometimes it can be easy to touch it by mistake or move it around. The one thing I do like about the touchscreen is the idea of being able to just touch to focus. That sounds kind of cool, but I just think that no one's really perfected it yet. And this camera has done such a good job of getting to a near perfect state now that I would be a little scared about putting something on it that would make us go, that doesn't work very well, you know? So maybe you wait until we really have figured out how to make touchscreens on cameras work the way we want them to work all the time before you put them on what many people consider to be the most beautiful camera you can buy. You know, if you want to put it on there, great. It's number 5 on my list, but it's certainly not something I've got to have. Number 4 is a better thumb grip. You can see on my camera, I actually have a thumb grip that I bought aftermarket and put on. And when I've got this camera in my hand with this thumb grip, I mean, it is rock solid. It's not going anywhere. And the only time I take the thumb grip off is when I am going to use a flash. And when I do that, I don't like the way the camera feels in my hand. It just feels like I could drop it or it could slip very, very easily. Many of the Fuji cameras have a better thumb grip option built into them, but the 100F is just a little too smooth on the backside. So what I would do, not that you asked, but what I would do is I would move this button here, and I would just move it over here or move it someplace else on the camera, and then I would put a dedicated grip right there. Just a little nub right there where your thumb could grab a hold really tight and hold the camera well, and then get rid of this. Because one of the things that's annoying about this thumb grip is, as much as I like it, it's annoying because when I want to put a flash on, then I have to take this off, and now I have to put it in my pocket, or I have to put it in a bag, or so. There's one more little thing that I could lose. So I would just as soon not have this thumb grip at all. Also, this wheel doesn't get used that much. I have to flip it out of the way to use this wheel. So you could move this wheel down to here, because I've heard people say they sometimes hit it by accident. Move this wheel down, move this button down as well, and then put a nice big thumb grip right there that we can lock onto this camera and not drop it. Okay, number 3 is a biggie. Remember a second ago when I talked about how they did such a great job of making this camera near perfect? One place where most people will agree that they kind of messed up was with the ISO dial. When they put the ISO dial on this version of the camera, previously there was no ISO dial on the camera. And on this version, wait a minute, I may be wrong about that. Was the last one, did the T have the ISO dial? It might have. They've got you have to pull it up and turn it to adjust it. It's just too weird. It's just too hard to get a hold of. And it's kind of tough to see inside this window what settings that you're using. So here's my very radical idea. Let's get a dedicated ISO dial right here. We're going to take the exposure compensation dial completely off the camera. We're going to put a dedicated ISO dial right here. And we're going to make the exposure compensation dial work off of the front. because that's where I use mine all the time anyway. Now, you may disagree with this and jump right in the comments and tell me if you do, but I keep my exposure compensation on C, which means that this front dial right here is my exposure compensation. Because when you are taking pictures and you're using the EVF, and especially if you're shooting in black and white, so you're trying to get something moody, maybe trying to underexpose to really get those blacks deep, and you're looking through the viewfinder and you're doing that, and you want to change that exposure, you want to use the exposure compensation, this right here is just not a natural thing to do. But simply rolling left and right here to make your exposure brighter or darker, it's just natural. So that's where I have mine set. Luckily with this camera, you can just set this to C, and then you can just do it right here. So just make it right here all the time, right? Just make this the exposure compensation dial, and then make this dial the dedicated ISO dial, because ISO is something that you're more likely to set and then never mess with again the whole time you're shooting. But exposure compensation, you're messing with that all the time. And it's just not natural to have it up here where you have to use 2 fingers to adjust it. There's a reason that Canon and Nikon have wheels on the front of their cameras. It's because that's where your finger falls, and that's just a natural best place for you to have those wheels. So that's a biggie. I would definitely move the ISO dial. And number 2 is Bluetooth connectivity. And this almost didn't make the list because I'm pretty sure they're going to do this anyway, because they've done it with all their latest cameras, so it's kind of a given that they're going to do this. But just in case, let's make sure they do it. Right now, if you want to transfer pictures to your phone, it uses Wi-Fi, and it would be better if it used Bluetooth, because if it used Bluetooth, it could be on all the time, which means the whole time you're shooting, the pictures are automatically transferring to your phone. Before this camera, I had the S, and the S didn't have any connectivity at all. So I had a Wi-Fi card in it, but it was always on. And it was cool because I would be taking pictures throughout the day, and then I would pull my phone out and the pictures would already be there. And instead of having to do the connectivity thing through the app and then sit there and wait for them to download, I would much prefer it if it was always downloading to the phone. So that's a big, big deal for me. I'm pretty sure they're going to do that anyway, but it's number 2 on my list, which brings us to the final thing, the number 1 thing that I definitely think that they need to do with the Fuji X100V. It's got to be the screen. The screen is fantastic on the back, but can you just give us a little bit of a flip? I don't want this screen to flip up for selfies. This isn't a selfie camera. We don't want to make it a selfie camera, right? This is an enthusiast camera for people who love cameras. But just the little flip, like you do with the X-T3, just enough so that I can hold it low and look at it, or hold it over my head and look at it, just a little flip like that. That's all I want. That's number 1. If they changed nothing else on the camera, but they changed that, it might be enough for me to upgrade. If they change that and they add Bluetooth, I'm done. Yeah, absolutely. It's an absolute upgrade for me. Who am I kidding? I'm gonna buy it the minute it comes out. Especially if they put the thing that's not on this list, because I thought it was a little too, I don't know, vain. But please, when you release the new one, please release the brown version immediately instead of waiting to put it out later, because I really want the one with the brown. I really like the brown. It's funny how this is the only camera I've ever owned that I don't know, I like putting gadgets and doodads on it, and the color of it is important to me. And you know how much time I spent deciding whether or not this was going to be black or this was going to be silver? I don't do that with my pro gear, but with this little camera, I don't know. I love to play with this camera. So there it is. There's my top 5. Those are the 5 things I would definitely change for the next iteration of the Fuji X100f. If you've got some suggestions, I hope you do. Please put them in the comments section below, and please subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.